Hey, my name is John and welcome to my Mercedes project, and if you watched the last episode you'll see we got it running, but now it's time to turn it into a fully driving sequential gearbox om606 190e. Well, what do I know about fitting a prop shaft to a car? The answer is somewhere between not enough and just enough to be dangerous, because I did make a few mistakes when I was fitting this engine and gearbox and I want to address those now. And just so you're following, this is a donut or coupling that goes onto the back of the gearbox. This is the first part of the prop shaft. This is the centre bearing carrier and this is the second part of the prop shaft. So if we take a look at this diagram that I've made here, this is from above if you're looking down from the roof. This is the engine, this is the gearbox, there should be a bit of prop shaft in here. This is the centre bearing carrier, this is the second part of the prop shaft, and this is the diff. And whenever I fitted this engine and gearbox, I've aligned it so that the output shaft of the gearbox runs down the centre line of the car. But whenever I went to fit the prop shaft, I realised that the diff is offset to the driver's side. The prop shaft is offset to the driver's side, and so is the centre bearing carrier. And so if I was to fit this first part of this prop shaft now, it would meet this gearbox at an angle. And that would wear out this donut coupling here that fits onto the gearbox. And so what I need to do is move the back of the gearbox round so that it lines up with this centre bearing carrier. So I need to move the back of the gearbox to the driver's side, but that should be easy enough to sort by re-drilling the holes in the floor for the gearbox mount. So looking at it from the side, this is all the same at the back of the car, because nothing has changed there. And this is very exaggerated at the front, but it's just to give you an idea. So what I've done here is I was advised to get the engine as low as possible because it would make more room for the gearbox in the tunnel, and in a way that is correct. I think in most cars that would probably be the case, and that would be good advice, but for me it hasn't worked because I've lowered the engine so much as I can, and then I've to make more clearance for the gearbox underneath the car, I've lifted the back of the gearbox up as high as I can, and that has run the output shaft of the gearbox out of line with the centre bearing. Okay, so what I've had to do is lift the engine up as high as I can and lower the gearbox by as little as I can. So I've lifted the front of the engine up by 15mm and dropped the back of the gearbox down by about 5, and that has brought them both in line. Okay, so that is what has worked for me. So this here is the prop shaft out of the 190e. This is the prop shaft from the om606 donor car, and this is the prop shaft from a BMW F30, the same as the gearbox. So this one here has a small universal joint and a small spline, which at its smallest point is about 22mm. This has got a larger universal joint, a larger spline. At the smallest point, it's about 26. This is the same size of larger universal joint, and the spline size in this at the smallest point is about 32mm. The issue with this is that it's hollow and the rest of these are solid. But this shaft is out of a car that has, I think it's 460 foot-pounds of torque, so it should be plenty strong. So what I need to do is to have the back part of the 190e to mate with the diff, and the front part of the BMW to mate with the gearbox, and what we do in between we need to decide. The easiest thing to do, I think, would be to use most of the 190e and have somebody fit the front part of this BMW one onto it, okay, and that would mean that it would bolt straight into the car once they'd done that. The issue is, as I say, this spline's very small and this universal joint's very small, so it's probably marginal as to whether or not this would take the power. Somebody has suggested that you could use this prop shaft here from the donor car, but what I'd have to do is transfer this part from the 190e onto this, and this part from the BMW onto this. Then I'd have to get a different bearing that goes in here and would allow me to fit this shaft into this rubber coupling. The only thing is, this would be a generic bearing. I don't know whether it would be designed to take the load of a prop shaft, although I imagine that would be just fine. The issue here is that this rubber coupling is scrap, so I'd have to buy one of those. This universal joint is scrap and it's not serviceable, so I'd have to buy another prop shaft to start with. I then have to pay to get the back of it changed, and I'd also have to pay to get the front of it changed. So I think it would be quite an expensive operation, this. I'm not sure it would be any better than this. So I think what I'm going to do is use all of the BMW prop shaft and then get the back part of the Mercedes 190e put onto it. And that just means that I have to make a new mount for this bearing carrier in the car. It'd probably make more sense to be doing this on a ramp, but I don't have one, so it is what it is. We'll get the job done regardless. So I went ahead and bolted the front part of the prop shaft onto the back of the gearbox, and I've lined it up in the center of this center bearing carrier mount. Okay, so it should be in the right position, and that's allowed me to make sure that the back of the gearbox is now in the right position. So I'm pretty happy with where it is, and I went inside the car and I've drilled out the spot welds on this center bearing carrier mount, and I'll keep that just in case I make a mistake and have to use it again later. But I'm now going to put the back of the BMW prop shaft in here, and that's going to allow me to make a new mount for it. What it's going to look like, I'm not too sure, but we'll get something sorted. And I've put a scissor jack underneath the front of the prop shaft so that whenever I add the weight of the prop shaft to the back of it, it's not going to droop down and go out of position. Well, I must say that option I had of using the original carrier bearing mount and making that really expensive prop shaft is looking quite appealing now, because this has taken me quite some time to get here. So I've made a bracket for this side, and I've made a bracket for this side, and trimmed down the original mount here on either side, re-drilled the holes in it, and I've made this little piece here to go over the top, and it's going to join the two together. So I'll take this prop shaft out, weld this on, and then I'll brace it all up, and that should be pretty much near there. And I did check with ChatGPT, as you do, and it actually said that this hollow spline shaft was probably, I give it the measurements, it said it was probably about 60% stronger than the om606 one. Not that it needed to be, but at least I'm not doing this for no reason. So who knew you could actually fail your engineering degree and still work this out 20 years later? Well, this is what I've come up with. So it's pretty much the same design as the original, except this is made out of 1mm plate and this is made out of 2mm plate, so it should be plenty strong enough. Now, I haven't decided if I'm going to weld this in or bolt it in, but I'll decide that later once I get the prop shaft back. I haven't filmed in for a couple of weeks here, but I have been working away at this. And this is now the prop shaft back from the machine shop, and it now has the Mercedes tripod welded onto the end of the BMW shaft, okay? So how I was able to do this was I bolted this entire prop shaft into the Mercedes, and I bolted it up to this BMW gearbox. I put this center bearing carrier in place, okay, and then I measured from the center of this back to the differential on the Mercedes, and that gave me this length here and what this length needed to be, okay, and then he was able to make the prop shaft from that. But before I done that, what I had to do was I extended this spline section out 20mm, okay. I just pulled the two bits of the shaft apart, and that allows me to be able to compress the shaft together to be able to get it into the car, and then I can extend it back out again. So without doing that, this wouldn't be able to fit in without taking either the gearbox or the differential out. Well, we finally have a prop shaft in place, so I went ahead and welded this bracket in. Now I've only welded it down here, here and up at the top, and that's so if I have to I can move it later, and I'll put some more weld on it when I know it's in the right place. But pretty happy with it. I'm pretty sure it's right, so I think we're pretty close to being able to give this a test drive. I sort of feel like I cheated you here because I haven't filmed any of this. I just didn't think it was going to be interesting, and also it was going to be too difficult to film. So I'm going to recap on what I've done here, and hopefully you follow along. So I'm pretty much ready to start this here. It does look a lot better once the inlet manifold is on here in place to cover all of this mess, but this is the way an om606 looks. So I've got the fuel pipes all connected up. I've also got the power steering pipes connected. I've used the first part of this om606 pipe. It runs around the back of the cooler. It's joined here into the 190E, okay? Now what I realised once I cut this om606 pipe in half and looked up the inside of it, the bore of it is very narrow. There's a restriction inside it, and I'm wondering if that's why some people say this power steering pump works okay and some people say it doesn't work with the steering box. I wonder, are they using this bit of the pipe or not, but we will find out for sure. So this is the coolant system, and I thought it was better maybe to make a diagram of this. So in the original petrol 6-cylinder 190E, the water comes out the back of the engine, into the heater, through the heater, and out to this side of the engine this way, okay? The problem with this here is that whenever you don't have the heater on, so it's set to cold, it cuts this loop off here, and then this coolant line does not work. Now that's probably okay for the petrol car, but it's not okay for the om606. So in the om606, again, out the back of the engine, into the heater, through the heater, into the auxiliary pump, okay, and then into the front of the engine. But whenever the heater is turned off, okay, it has a smaller steel bypass pipe that runs around the back of the bulkhead, and the water can flow that way instead, okay. Now, whenever people fit this engine into another type of car, and instead of fitting this here bypass, what they do is fit it with a pipe from the back of the engine back to the front of the engine here, and this is called a coolant mod, okay, and this is a coolant mod, okay. So I figured out that I can't actually use this, and the reason being is because I have a heat exchanger for my gearbox. So this is what I've done. I've got the water coming out the back of the engine, into the heater, through the heater, then this way round this side of the engine, into the heat exchanger, and then back into the auxiliary pump, and then into the engine this way. And I've also fitted two T-pieces here to join the two pipes together with a smaller pipe, and I'm hoping that it is going to loop through this heater, okay, and not just choose to go through this bypass, but we'll have to see if this works or not. I do think it'll cool the engine, but whether or not the heater works is another thing. But in practice that looks like this. So it's worth bearing in mind the whole back of this here is covered, okay, with a bulkhead trim, so you won't actually see any of this. But this pipe here is out of the om606 on the other side of the engine. It's into the heater here, through the heater. This hose here is actually off a 1.6 Astra H, okay. I bought a bleed valve here, and it's actually suited because it meant I could join the two pipes here. This funny shaped hose is off the om606, and it normally sits up in this area for the heater. Into this is a T-piece, and then this is the other T-piece. This is the loop underneath that is going to act as the bypass, hopefully. I've got a new bit of pipe that comes down here into the heat exchanger down here, and then it's very hard to see, but see this here metal tube, okay, it runs out of the heat exchanger along the bottom of the radiator to this hose on this side. Now this steel tube was actually the one that came off this car originally, and it joined up with the heater here and took the coolant to the engine this way, okay, so I've reused that. This bit of hose here is off the original header tank. I'm not sure where this one came from, but it's definitely off either the om606 or the 190E, and this is the auxiliary pump we're talking about. So I'm pretty sure that's us sorted out here, ready to have a go at starting and driving this car. Just need to put the inlet manifold on, and we're pretty much there. Well, I think this is it. I think we're finally ready to see if we can get this thing to move. So I have got some water in it now, and I've got the temperature gauge working. I've had it running. The power steering seems to work. The brake seems to work. The fan switch works, but I'm not sure whether it's getting any heat through it yet. I think I'm going to need to drive it before we can say whether that bypass works or not. So from the last time, there's a few discrepancies in the wiring for this TCU. One being that I got a 1 minute delay relay, and now apparently you only need a 10-second or 20-second delay relay. I'm not sure which one it is, but the one I have is going to work fine. And when it needed a 12-volt ignition switched wire, now it doesn't. And I think the issue here is the firmware versions of this are constantly being updated, and basically this has happened in the meantime of me fitting this kit. So I think I'm basically ready to start working through this. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing typically. I did ask about it, and I was told to get an ESG51 file off the thing. I don't know. I went on it, and that page is not there. It just goes page not found. So I asked on the Facebook group, and I got a reply back about protocols and CAN things, and I'm no wiser. So basically I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to see what happens here. Right, well, it's definitely recognizing it, so I've got it, must have it wired correctly. So leave this with me here, and I'll see if I can work my way through it. If you're wondering what I'm doing with my phone, I'm actually using it to turn the camera on and off. So we're at the actual cutting edge of technology today here. So it seems pretty simple, this, so far. there's an option here where you pick the type of gearbox you've got. There is an option here to click ESG or EGS 51. So perhaps that's what they're talking about. And it could be that simple, maybe. There is an option for a shifter. I've got a BMW F series shifter. You need to put in the wheel size and you need to put in the diff ratio. Aside from that, I'm not quite sure what else to do. There is an option over here to click update. So maybe that saves something. So I guess I'm probably going to have to try and start it and see if something happens. I would have thought that the shifter should have lit up, but there's no light on it, so I don't know. You know, there's something I completely forgot about. The gearbox actually thinks it's still in a BMW, so it's locked to the BMW ECU. So what you have to do is unlock it, and so you run it through a flasher program, and that's basically meant to unlock it, so you'll be able to use it. So I'm running that now. It says it's going to take about 15 minutes, and when that's up, we'll see what happens. Well, it is very much later in the day, and I've spent a good bit of time looking at this, and I certainly found one problem that was wrong, and possibly what might be the last thing that's wrong with it. So down here, there's 3 little squares, and one's highlighted transmission, one's ECU, and one's shifter. And whenever they're not working, or they're not, I don't know, connected, they're red, and you need them all to be green. So I was able to get the trans and ECU green, and how I done that was I had the wrong map in the engine ECU. So I need a map in that ECU that thinks it is still in a W210 chassis car. Okay, and I just got a generic om606 map in it. So that solved that. The shifter's still red. So I've been looking at this for hours and couldn't work this out. And I put a post up on Facebook, and this F series shifter that I've got here that is screwed in with wood screws temporarily is actually not out of an F series. It's a G series shifter. So I'm going to see if there's actually a click or a something here for a G series shifter. Yeah, G something. Yeah. Right, okay. I wonder, is this going to make any difference? Update. Still red. So it is. So that's possibly not it. Oh wait, that's in can 3. Hold on. Oh, there, can 1. Okay. No, it's still red. There's an option for can 2. Can 2, try that one. Still the same. So I'm not too sure what is going on. Maybe I need to start it or something and see what's up with it. I went in the house there, not too sure what my next move was going to be, and then I came back out again and put the ignition on, and it is lit up. So, and all these are turned green. So it must need the ignition to cycle to make the changes. So I think this should work. So let's start it and see what happens. Heat this because it's diesel. I'd be really surprised if this works, but soon find out. No, it's not working. But I think I know what's wrong with it. It has no wire on it to tell it that my foot is on the brake, and I think it needs that to shift a gear. I'm not sure whether I can change a setting on this here. I didn't see there any instructions for wiring that up. So I'll have another play with this, and I'll see if we can get this to work. I was defeated yesterday, but I won't be beat again today. So I'm pretty sure I know how to do this. I did go on to the canformance website, search the whole thing, and if there's a way that it tells you how to wire in a brake switch, I can't find it. Okay, I think that most of these canformance ECUs are wired into cars which have CAN bus, and this is obviously a lot older and doesn't have that. So that would give you the signal for the brake switch. So I need to give it a signal for a brake switch. Now the brake switch here gives me out a 12 volt positive, and I did a search on the Facebook group, and I spent about half an hour flicking through different posts till I eventually found one where somebody said if you use one of these digital input settings, okay, and you click on it, it gives you an option for a brake switch. So I need to wire this to a digital input on this TCU. The issue is that I can only put a ground to it, and this is giving me a 12 volt positive. So what I need to do is take the 12 volt, put it into a relay, and use the relay to switch a ground, okay? And that ground is then going to be able to give a signal to the TCU, and that should hopefully activate the brake thing and make it work. So the only issue is there's not actually a wire on that wiring loom for this digital input that I can find. So I think I'm going to have to put one into that plug, wire in the relay, and click this button, and then hopefully that should work. Maybe. It should. I've the relay wired in here, and I'm pretty sure it's wired correctly. I've selected the brake switch and the digital input. I've updated it. I've turned the ignition on and off. I don't have bother getting the wire into that plug, but I did manage it. So I'm pretty sure it should work now. But listen, I've been confident before, so let's see here. We can get it to start first. The battery might be a bit flat. Right, going. It's in drive. Right, so it works. So I need to check the gearbox oil, make sure it's the right level, and then I'm going to take it for a test drive. I can't believe it. So I'm going to take a short run here and see what it's like. So just take it up the drive, because it wouldn't really be very legal on the road this. Right, well, I've got a squeak somewhere coming out of the, it sounds like it's coming out of the transmission tunnel. But I didn't think anything was rubbing unless my prop shaft isn't in the right place. But it's also not that smooth shit. But I think it's going to need setup, but I don't think something like this works straight out of the box. It's not an aggressive shift. I just would have thought of it having a wee bit smoother. Definitely need to look at that squeak. I was a bit more promising driving it faster there, I think. Felt a little bit better. It feels like it really wants to go. But I'm a wee bit worried of it. I think I need to look into it a bit more and make sure it's definitely all set up right. So you are. 8HP 70 190E with an om606. Well, I have a bit of a confession to make. So after I turned the camera off the last time, for some unknown reason, I decided I was going to take it back up the drive and stick my boot in it and see just how fast it was going to be. And it turned out that was a really bad idea not to film that. So I took it off from a start here, and listen, it was shifting. Wheels were spinning, smoke was coming out of the exhaust, the front of the car lifted up a bit, and it was a good time. So I was pretty confident this thing is going to be really sharp whenever it's all dialed in. Now, about halfway up the drive, next thing is there's a loud bang, bang, bang sound came out of it. And I was like, right, okay. So shut it off, and I was pretty sure it sounded like the prop shaft that came off it. That was sort of got that rhythmic sound to it. So had a quick look at it. prop shaft was fine. Started back up again, and the bang 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 sound was still there. Okay, so opened the bonnet and you could hear compression coming out of the engine. So it sounded to me like I had blown a hole inside the block, and I was thinking, this is the third go up the drive and I've blown this up already. So I didn't really know what to do. It definitely sounded like it was losing compression. So I had to get it back down the drive, and thought it was blown up. It's blown up now anyway. So put it in reverse, brought it down the drive, stopped it, and then I thought, you know what, I want to hear this again, see what it sounds like is wrong with it. I started it up, and it sounded completely fine, as if nothing was ever wrong with it, and it still sounds fine. So I think what I've experienced here is what's called valve float, and it seems to be a rite of passage with these engines, because everybody talks about it, but it is not what I had thought it would be. It was a lot. It sounded a lot worse. But they do seem to be able to survive from it as long as you get off the power instantly. So I think the gist of this here, if I'm understanding correctly, is most people think it's to do with excessive back pressure in the exhaust that holds the valve open, and another guy who's very knowledgeable, he thinks that it's excessive boost pressure that holds open the valve. But either way, the valve isn't able to return up because the valve springs aren't strong enough. Okay, and I think what that must mean is that it must create a gap between the lifter and the cam whenever the cam rotates around, and so the oil system must fill up that follower. Okay, maybe I'm thinking so that whenever the engine rotates again, the valve is held open, and until the pressure is dissipated out of that follower, it must hold the valve open and it loses compression. So I think initially what I thought here was that whenever it took off, it must have held the revs too high, because I was thinking, listen, it's got a standard turbo in this. How could it have too much boost pressure? But the more I've thought about it, is I don't think that's what's happened. It's something that I have done wrong here that has created this. So in these engines, whenever they're fitted into a W210 chassis, it uses a vacuum solenoid, one of these, okay, to control the wastegate on the turbo. And in a normal turbo, conventional turbo, it normally uses boost pressure, so these are slightly different. So there was no instructions for wiring this up in the DSL1 manual, and it did work out that it was meant to have this, but I asked on a Facebook group, going, do I really need this? And a load of people replied, go, no, just put the vacuum straight into the wastegate, it'll be grand, don't worry about it. And one guy said, you might get boost creep, or you might get, not boost creep, you might get valve lift. And I thought, I like them odds, it's going to be like, it's like 10 to 1 here. So it turned out that one guy was right, and I think it could be something to do with whatever way this revs, or maybe the gears closer together, it revs faster or lighter or something, but whatever happened, it happened this. So I think what I'm going to need to do is to wire this in, okay, and as I say, there was no instructions for it, but I did go on to the Facebook group and I found where somebody had asked about it, and basically there's two wires on it, and one of them goes to the ECU, and I think one of them's an earth or a power or something, but it's pretty simple. And it goes into output 5 on the ECU if you're ever looking for it. So get that sorted. Hopefully that'll stop it making too much boost. Okay, and I've also got myself a boost gauge so that I know what's happening. So hopefully it'll not happen again. But I'll get these wired in and we'll give it another try. I think in terms of the engine conversion, that's pretty much everything in place now. It does need a bit of tidying, but there's only so much I'm going to be able to do with that. It does need a different manifold on it and a different turbo, but aside from that, it basically is an om606 190E. I have got a set of trade plates on it now, so this is about as legal as I can make it today. Got the headlights back in it, indicators. I have got my boost gauge plumbed in here. Okay, so obviously it's temporary. Here's my temporary wood screws. So yeah, it needs a lot of tidying in here. I'm not worried about that at the minute, but we'll take it out another drive and hopefully take it out in the road here and we'll see how it does. I'd have to say, if I got pulled over here, all of this could take a bit of explaining, and I don't think I'm making a YouTube video would quite cut it. So I'll probably keep this pretty brief, but we'll see how we get on here. I have drove it a bit out to here, and what I've noticed is that whenever you try and drive it slow, the shifts just aren't as smooth as I would have thought they would have been. They're sort of like But when you be driving a bit faster, it's a bit better, and I think it's just going to need setup, basically. I was told I was probably going to need to spend about a day trying to set up that engine ECU just to get it perfected. Now, what I need to do to fine tune it, I don't know, but I'll work it out at some point. But basically, for taking the ECU out of the box, taking the gearbox ECU out of the box and plugging the two together, it's going pretty well. So I'm pretty pleased with it. It does seem to go through all the gears. I have no indication to see what gear it's in, but like, I mean, it's probably doing 40 mile an hour here in 8th, and it's sort of more or less ticking over. So yeah, it's pretty happy with it. Yeah, so this road here is particularly empty and there's nothing else on it, so I'll give it a bit of juice here and see what it does. Yeah, so it's definitely pretty fast. I'm very impressed with it. I don't really know what you would do if you had, I think these are only meant to have 170 brake horsepower standard, and I don't know what you would do with 400, 450, 500, 600 horsepower that some of them have. I actually think this car probably wouldn't need just as much horsepower as some other cars because it's that bit lighter, being a 190E. It's also got 8 gears, and so I think basically what that means is that each gear would have to do less work to get the same sort of progress. So I don't know what way I'll really finally end up what sort of power output I'm going to go for, but I was intending about 450 horsepower, so that's the aim anyway. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it, so there you are, it's driving. I've been trying to think of a better way to explain this, and I'm pretty sure if I'm wrong, somebody's going to correct me in the comments, but I think what I've done here by taking the engine out of the donor car, fitting it into this chassis, with this gearbox, the higher numerical number diff and the smaller wheel and tyre package, is essentially give the engine more leverage between itself and the road. And if you ask ChatGPT, what it would predict is that it would give it the equivalent or the effect of having an extra 50% torque off the line in first gear. So whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it certainly feels pretty sharp. It doesn't feel like a standard car. And in fact, I actually took it out the road the other day with my brother-in-law in the car, and we're doing about 45 mile an hour, and I put my foot down, the gearbox kicked down, and basically the wheels spun. So it's definitely pretty promising. And another thing that's going on here is that because there's more gears, they're much closer together. So whenever somebody's building one of these engines, what they're trying to do is get as big a power band as possible. But I don't think it would matter so much in this car. So I'm wondering if the choice of turbos and things like that might be different for this car. I do have that 450 brake horsepower capable S356V Borg Warner turbo, which is off a John Deere tractor. And I was planning to fit it with a larger fuel injection pump at some point. But I'm wondering if first I try this with a smaller turbo and see how fast I can get it to go on the standard injection pump, which might be something that's interesting to find out. But you can let me know what you think in the comments. So on to this gear shift here. So I did actually put a clip of this onto Instagram the other day, and it got something like 2 million views. But what I did see was a lot of people were sort of questioning, why are you fitting an automatic gearbox to this? Presumably they think that a manual's better, but as you would have seen in the thumbnail, that isn't the intention. So I have got this sequential gear shifter. Now I wasn't planning to buy it yet, but I just got carried away and had to have it. And this is sort of going to explain to everyone why I've went this route with it. So we will try and fit this. You know, I can't actually remember the last time I was so excited about fitting something to a car. So basically this is what the whole project has been about. Once I read about these 8HP gearboxes, figured out you could do this for them. Then I remembered I had the om606 engine sitting, and this is why I bought this car and built this project. So this is what it's all been leading up to. So now this piece here still needs welded in, but in fact the tunnel still all needs welded up, but I'll do this once the gearbox comes back out again. So it's pretty simple. It's kind of like a giant toggle switch. So if you push it forward, it gives a negative signal, and if you pull it back, it gives a negative signal, and you need another negative signal here on a switch. Now this is only temporary, that will flick it between automatic and manual mode. So I have had to play with it out in the yard here, and I've got a grasp of how it works, but I'm not completely up to speed with it. So whenever you start the car, it's in park. Okay, so you put your foot on the brake, and if you want to go into reverse, you push it forward. Okay, if you want to go back into neutral, you put your foot on the brake, pull it back. And if you want to go into drive, you would put your foot on the brake and pull it back into drive. Now, if you have it in manual mode, instead of going back into drive, it goes back into first, and then you'd go obviously second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and up to seventh and eighth. And then if you want to go back down the gears, you can push it forward, okay, all the way back down to neutral. But I don't imagine it would go into neutral without stopping the car and putting your foot on the brake. So it's pretty simple to wire in. So there's only 2 wires for this, and one for the wire that changes between what mode it's in. So they've used up all my digital inputs on this TCU now. But what I did figure out when I was going through the menu was, whenever I said earlier that I had no wire for my brake switch, there is actually an analog wire in that loom, and I did realise by going through the menu that you can convert that into a digital signal, and I'm pretty sure I could have used that for my brake switch. But that being said, let's take it out for a drive and see what you think of it. So we'll take this for a drive and see what it can do. So it's in automatic now, and if I flick this switch, that should be it in manual. So it should be first. Second. Turn in here. You can definitely tell the tune isn't right in the ECU because there's like a blip whenever it downshifts. So we'll have to work on that. Then downshift, you just go forward. So it's pretty impressive. I'm definitely glad I went for it. Now, I would say that probably the BMW shifter is probably all round better for everyday use, but it doesn't have the theatre of this, and to be honest with you, this is just what I want, so that's what I've got. And you can just put it back into auto mode by the flick of this, so which, let's see. Right, so that's it in auto again, and I don't have to touch the gear stick at all. So yeah, definitely I'm pretty happy with it. And probably the next step for this car, we'll have to see about fitting that turbo. We've got a hydraulic suspension kit for it, also Mercedes Evolution Cosworth body kit for it. But some of you are probably wondering what's happened with the Metro project, and truth be told, I'd actually spent so long working on the bodywork, and also was waiting on a guy making a roll cage for me, and after waiting for 7 months, he worked out that he couldn't actually bend that type of tube. So I was pretty fed up with it at that stage in time, and I had all the parts sitting for this, and I thought I'll spend a month and I'll get this on the road, and then I'll go back to the Metro. But this has taken a lot longer to do than I had thought, and because it started, I just wanted to see it through and get it to, at least to this point. So it's now back to the Metro and do a bit more work on it and get it painted. So if you like what you've seen, like the video, and you can leave a comment, and if you want you can subscribe. See you next time.